You woke up this morning and probably did something your ancestors could not have imagined. You turned a handle, and clean water appeared, warm if you wanted it. Then maybe you squeezed a tube of minty paste onto a plastic brush, scrubbed each tooth, stood under hot falling water, used soap, shampoo, deodorant, clean clothes, and then somehow still felt like you needed coffee before becoming a real person. Now take all of that away. No shower, no toothpaste, no shampoo, no deodorant, no washing machine, no fresh laundry, no bathroom mirror, no minty morning confidence. Just you. The weather, fire, skin, hair, animal hides, food, dirt, smoke, water when you could reach it, and a small group of other humans dealing with the exact same problem. So, did ancient humans smell bad by modern standards? Probably, yes, but that answer is too simple. Because the real question is not just, did they smell? The real question is, how did humans stay clean enough to survive without modern hygiene? And the answer is much stranger than they were dirty, because ancient humans were not helpless. They were not stupid, and they were not just walking around for hundreds of thousands of years like confused mud goblins. They had tools, just not our tools. Let's start with the mouth, because right now your mouth is not exactly empty. It contains hundreds of species of bacteria. Brushing your teeth does not remove all of them, it manages them. Modern toothpaste is not a magic spell, it is crowd control. Ancient humans did not have toothbrushes like ours. No toothpaste, no floss, no mouthwash, no electric toothbrush yelling at them for stopping after 30 seconds. And yet, when researchers study ancient teeth, the story is not as simple as old humans had terrible mouths. In fact, one of the biggest changes in human dental health seems to come later, when diets changed. Before farming, many humans ate a wider variety of foods: meat, roots, nuts, berries, leaves, seeds, whatever the environment provided. Then agriculture changed the menu. Humans started eating more grain-heavy diets, more soft starches, more carbohydrates, more food that could stick around in the mouth and feed certain bacteria. In other words, ancient humans did not always have better dental hygiene. They often had very different food. The moment humans became better at making bread, they also became better at making cavities, which is not exactly the slogan you want on a bakery window, but they were not doing nothing. Long before modern toothbrushes, humans could use sticks, and that sounds ridiculous until you remember what a toothbrush basically is. A stick with bristles. A chewing stick, frayed at one end, could scrape teeth, clean between them, and in some cases even bring useful plant chemistry with it. Some traditional chewing sticks, like miswak, have been studied because they can reduce plaque and support oral hygiene surprisingly well. So a stick was not automatically primitive. Sometimes it was a toothbrush that had not gone through a marketing department yet. Now let's talk about the part everyone actually clicked for: body odor. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Sweat itself is not always the main smell. Fresh sweat is mostly water and salt. The smell usually comes later, when bacteria on your skin break down compounds in sweat and produce odor as a result. So ancient body odor was not just about sweating, it was about skin, bacteria, heat, clothing, food, weather, movement, smoke, and time. An ancient human walking all day, carrying tools, sitting near fire, sleeping on plant bedding or animal hides, wearing the same covering for days, and living without modern soap would probably smell stronger than a modern person. But stronger does not automatically mean dirty. And this is where our modern imagination gets a little unfair. We imagine ancient humans as dirty because they lacked our products. But our products are not the same thing as intelligence. Your ancestors did not need a commercial with a slow motion splash of blue liquid to understand that some things were clean and some things were not. They knew rot smelled wrong, bad water smelled wrong, waste smelled wrong. A wound that smelled bad mattered. Dead animals smelled wrong. A bad smell was not just embarrassing, it could be information. In a world without labels, without hospitals, without expiration dates, without alarms, your nose was technology. It helped answer basic survival questions. Can I eat this? Can I drink that? Should we sleep here? Is that animal fresh? Is this person sick? Is something wrong nearby? Smell was not just social awkwardness, it was data. Very personal data, admittedly, but data. And one of the strongest ancient human smells may not have been sweat. It may have been smoke. Fire was not a weekend camping hobby. Fire was heat, light, cooking, protection, a social place, a tool. If you lived near fire day after day, smoke got everywhere. In your hair, on your skin, on your clothing, in your shelter, on your tools, on your bedding, on animal hides, on food, on everything. To us, that might smell strong. To them, smoke may have meant something very different. Safety, warmth, cooked food, a group nearby, a place where the dark did not completely win. One of the oldest human smells may have been campfire. Not perfume, campfire. And honestly, as ancient smells go, that is a pretty good deal. But clothing made the story more complicated. Once humans started wearing clothes regularly, smell had a new place to stay. A cloak could keep wind off your body. A hide could help you sleep through cold nights. A wrap could protect your skin. But after days of walking, sweating, sitting near smoke, sleeping, moving, and carrying things, that cloak probably developed a personality. Not a good personality, but a personality. And we know clothing became important not only from tools and hides, but from one of the strangest witnesses in human history: lice. Body lice are different from head lice. Head lice live near hair, body lice live in clothing. They hide in seams, they lay eggs in fabric, which means body lice become useful evidence for a bigger human story. If body lice evolved to live in clothes, then humans had to be wearing clothes often enough for those lice to make a living there. Genetic studies suggest body lice may have split from head lice at least tens of thousands of years ago, possibly much earlier. That does not give us the first shirt. It does not show us the first cloak. But it gives us a weird signal. At some point, humans invented clothing, and parasites moved in like tiny landlords. The first wardrobe did not just change fashion, it created real estate. Now let's move from clothes to the ground beneath them, because early humans were not necessarily sleeping directly in random dirt either. At sites in South Africa, archaeologists have found evidence of ancient plant bedding. At Sibidu Cave, plant bedding from around 77,000 years ago included sedges and aromatic plants. At Border Cave, even older bedding layers have been linked with grass and ash matters because fine ash can make it harder for some crawling insects to move through. Some plant materials may also have helped repel insects. So this was not a mattress store, but it was definitely a plan. People were choosing sleeping materials, managing pests, using fire byproducts, making sleeping spaces more comfortable, and possibly less disgusting. That matters because it shows something important. Ancient hygiene was not always about smelling nice. Often it was about reducing risk. Less insects, less rot, less waste near the body, less bad water, less contact with things that made people sick. Modern hygiene often asks, do I smell fresh? Ancient hygiene may have asked, will this make me sick? Will this attract insects? Can we sleep here? Is this water safe? Is this wound getting worse? That's a very different kind of clean. Now let's talk about hair, because hair is where things get personal. Ancient humans had no shampoo, but that does not mean hair was simply ignored forever. Hair can be combed, picked through, cut, tied, braided, scraped clean, rinsed, smoked, and checked for parasites. We have ancient combs from later periods, including a famous comb from Lachish, about 3,700 years old, with an inscription asking to remove lice from hair and beard, which is amazing for two reasons. First, it shows that lice were enough of a problem to deserve writing. Second, one of humanity's early written messages was basically, please get these bugs out of my hair. History is majestic. Grooming was not just about looking nice. In many primates, grooming is social glue. It builds trust. It requires closeness. It requires time. It says, I am close enough to touch you, and you trust me not to make it weird. For early humans, checking hair, skin, wounds, and parasites may have been both practical and social. Hygiene was not always private. Sometimes it was community work, and that is another thing modern people forget. Today, hygiene is often something you do alone in a bathroom. For much of human history, keeping bodies functional may have been a group activity. Less spa day, more please inspect my scalp before I lose my mind. Now, water. This part is simple and not simple. Ancient humans were not afraid of water. They needed it. They followed it. They camped near it when they could. They drank it. They crossed it. They washed in it. But there was no single ancient bathing routine. A river valley was different from a desert. A cold steppe was different from a tropical forest. A rainy season was different from winter. A small mobile camp was different from a crowded settlement. So we should not imagine every ancient human taking daily relaxing baths. But we also should not imagine them proudly avoiding water like allergic cats. No bathroom does not mean no washing. It means washing depended on place, climate, season, risk, access, and common sense. Soap is another good example. Soap is ancient, but humans are much older than soap. Evidence for soap-like materials goes back to ancient Mesopotamia, thousands of years ago. But humans had been living, sweating, hunting, gathering, raising children, sleeping, bleeding, healing, and surviving for much longer than that. So before soap, people needed other methods. Sand can scrub, ash can cut grease, clay can absorb oils, water can carry dirt away, sunlight can dry things, smoke can affect insects, plants can smell strong, taste strong, and sometimes do useful things. None of these are modern soap, but none of them are nothing. That is the key idea. Ancient humans were not using our products. They were using the world around them, and some of those solutions were smarter than we give them credit for. Now comes the part nobody wants to talk about, but everybody wonders about: toilet habits. Ancient humans handled this the same way every other animal on Earth handles it. They went outside, but they were probably smarter about it than that sounds. Because waste near food, water, and sleeping areas is dangerous. You do not need germ theory to notice that a camp becomes worse when waste is too close. You just need a nose and maybe one very bad week. Archaeologists can sometimes study traces of ancient waste, including fecal biomarkers preserved in sediments. At El Salt in Spain, researchers studied traces connected to Neanderthals around 50,000 years ago. Other archaeological work has looked at how hunter-gatherer communities managed waste in structured ways. The details vary, but the basic lesson is simple. Where waste goes matters, and small mobile groups had one advantage that later crowded cities often did not: space. If a camp became unpleasant, dangerous, or exhausted, people could move. A medieval city could not simply stand up and walk away because the street smelled bad. Small groups living outdoors, moving regularly, and spreading activities across space often avoided some of the sanitation disasters that later came with dense settlements. Not because they were magical hygiene geniuses, because density changes the rules. When thousands of people live close together with animals, waste, narrow streets, limited drainage, and contaminated water, the problem gets bigger. Much bigger. Ancient hunter-gatherers were not cleaner because they were smarter than later city dwellers. They often had a different problem, and sometimes the best hygiene tool was distance. Distance from waste, distance from rot, distance from bad water, distance from a place that had become unsafe. So did ancient humans smell bad? By modern standards, probably often. They likely smelled smokier, earthier, more animal, more human, more like fire, sweat, weather, skin, food, and the places they lived. But that smell did not always mean failure. It could mean work, travel, fire, food, family, shelter, survival. And here's the weirdest part. Ancient humans might smell bad to us, but we might smell insane to them. Soap, shampoo, laundry detergent, deodorant, toothpaste, perfume, fabric softener, artificial fragrance. To us, that smells clean. To someone from deep history, it might smell like a chemical storm wearing pants. Clean is not just a smell. Clean is a culture. And our culture has trained us to expect almost no body odor at all. That expectation is very new. For most of human history, bodies were more present. Smoke after fire, sweat after movement, earth after walking, animal hides after use, food after cooking, rain after weather, skin after living. Not hidden, not sprayed away, not sealed under layers of modern products. Just present. So the answer is not. Ancient humans were clean like us. They were not. But the answer is also not. Ancient humans were filthy idiots. They were not. They had water, fire, plants, ash, sand, combs, grooming, distance, observation, and thousands of years of paying attention. They noticed which stick made the mouth feel cleaner, which plant kept insects away, which bedding felt safer, which water smelled wrong, which wound was getting worse, which place should be avoided. Your ancestors were not dirty in the simple way we imagine. They were working with different tools, and some of those tools were better than we give them credit for.